Joseph Stalin was one of the most brutal dictators of the 20th century. After taking power, his immediate efforts to turn the Soviet Union into a global superpower backfired, causing his leadership to be called into question. Unwilling to face the possibility of defeat, Stalin decided there was only one option: find and kill everybody who opposed him. So join us today as we examine the Great Purge, Stalin's cold-hearted execution of over 1 million of his own citizens, just to ensure that nobody who survived would dare question his authority ever again. Now, it all began in 1924 with the death of Vladimir Lenin. When he fell into a coma on January the 21st, 1924, and died later that same day, the stage was set for somebody else to claim power. With the two frontrunners being Joseph Stalin and Leon Trotsky. Stalin was the general secretary of the Communist Party, and Trotsky was the commissar for military and naval affairs, essentially making them the top political official and top military official, respectively. It took 4 years, but Stalin emerged victorious as the leader of the Soviet Union. He exiled Trotsky to Turkey and began undertaking the first of his 3 5-year plans. Now, the first 5-year plan had 2 major objectives: rapid industrialization and the collectivization of agriculture. Privately owned livestock and farmlands became government property overnight. The government seized the vast majority of the grain being produced, choosing to export it rather than feed its own people. Unfortunately, this resulted in years of famine across the Soviet Union, with the worst year being 1932 to 33. It's estimated that the famine resulted in the deaths of 5.7 to 8.7 million people, with as many as 7.5 million of those deaths occurring in a single year. While Stalin had been widely accepted as the new leader of the Soviet Union, his disastrous 5-year plan made people call his leadership into question. By 1934, Stalin's rivals were already trying to make moves against his authority. Even from exile, Trotsky was calling for the removal of Stalin from office, and he wasn't alone. That summer, Adolf Hitler carried out Operation Hummingbird, also known as the Night of the Long Knives. It was 3 days of extrajudicial executions of Hitler's political opponents, and it is claimed that Stalin was inspired by this. But it wasn't all in yet. In an attempt to win back public support, Stalin would take contradictory actions. He began releasing prisoners who had been convicted of minor offenses and launched a commission to investigate false imprisonments. But at the same time, he was ordering executions of suspected spies without trial. This wouldn't last long, however. While Stalin did his best to feign a desire to limit government oppression, that ended in December of 1934 with the assassination of Sergei Kirov, a high-ranking Soviet official and strong advocate of Stalin. Following Kirov's assassination, Stalin began becoming extremely concerned with the threat of assassination. He's often described as having become paranoid at this point, but one thing was clear: there was no more room for mixed messages. Public actions to show a reduction in state repression would come to an end, and instead Stalin made it clear that his enemies would be found and dealt with. Throughout 1935, this mostly just meant expelling suspected enemies from urban areas. People would be expelled from major cities like Leningrad by the thousands, forced onto the collective farms where they couldn't cause as much trouble. This was already a purge in a manner of speaking, and it had been going on for years. The Soviet Union's Communist Party had been purging its ranks of members, with over 400,000 people being expelled from the party for fear that they were Trotskyites. But in 1936, the purge was going to take on a new face. Executions against ordinary civilians accused of being spies or attempting to undermine the Soviet Union were hardly rare, but for the first time, Stalin was going to turn the party against its own upper ranks, and this purge of party leadership was going to be as public as it was bloody. Now, the first of the Moscow trials is generally considered the official beginning of the Great Purge.
Alright, stopping it there, and welcome to Mika Reaction Reviews. We're reacting to things on the internet, same day, same shirt, different video. And today we're reacting to, he has a prominent YouTube channel. I'll put his name on the screen. It'll also be in the title. I've shortened down this video, so if you would like to see the entire video, you have to go to his channel and watch the entire video. He makes a lot of really good videos, educational videos, informing things on big historical things to small ones, but they're really well done and seemingly well researched. Today he's talking about Stalin and the Great Purge. Now, I'm watching this because I'm just trying to educate myself along with you guys. I've heard of Stalin. I've heard here and there his crimes of towards humanity. I've seen progressives and university students carry the sickle and hammer flag and wear Stalin t-shirts like he's a rock star. I've heard people compare modern day neoliberals and communists and Marxists to wanting to Stalinize the world or community or the West. But I still didn't know in detail who Stalin was and what Stalin's crimes really were in detail, what he actually did. And so I'm watching this to educate myself. So, you know, if anybody wants me to debate the great Stalin, I have some facts and data in my back pocket to dispute their claims. The privatizing or the government takeover of farmland kind of reminds me a little little bit of what's going on globally today. You see farmers, and I think I already reacted to, I don't know if it's posted yet, of the farmers in French like shooting manure and like politicians in government buildings. They're in protests. You've seen Canadians farmers protest. You've seen Indians farmer protesting off themselves at a rapid rate. You've seen American farmers protest. It seems like across the board there's a lot of farmers who aren't happy with what the government's doing. I don't know exactly what each government is doing to each farm community that is in their country, whether they're privatizing it, whether they're trying to strip their land away from them, but that kind of was what it reminds me of. And also this privatizing of people's private property is something that a lot of neoliberals or neo-Marxist communist socialists today will say that should be done, that people shouldn't have private property, that it should be universal, it should be a community thing, everyone should have access to everything, it all should be equal. But what does that look like if you put that into law and to action today? Do you just seize people's property? Do you just go in with guns and military? Are you really think people are just going to happily hand over the stuff that they work for or been passed down to them for generations? I don't think so. So usually what is going to happen is things are going to be seized by the military and the government. People are going to be put into gulags or put to the wall. But anyway, let's continue with the video.
Bloody. Now, the first of the Moscow trials is generally considered the official beginning of the Great Purge. It was a trial of 16 supposed Trotskyite counter-revolutionaries, with the chief defendants in the trial being Grigory Zinoviev and Lev Kamenev. The two were prominent figures in the Communist Party and had been among Lenin's closest associates. While it was true that both men opposed Stalin politically, especially in light of the death toll resulting from the famine, they were trying to enact change through political means. In 1937, Stalin directed the NKVD and regional party members to estimate the number of criminals and kulaks in each district. Kulaks was a term that before the Soviet Union specifically referred to peasants that owned 8 acres of land or more. Once the Soviet Union was formed and land was collectivized, kulak became more of a vague term that referred to wealthy peasants and property ownership in general. Though their property had been seized by the government, the formerly wealthy peasants were seen as a threat to the communist society, and as such, they needed to be purged. Yezhov issued NKVD Order 00447, which was designed to deal with the kulaks and other anti-Soviet elements, such as Trotskyites, members of any political party beside the Communist Party, suspected political enemies of Stalin, intellectuals, and really, well, anybody that they just felt like they wanted to purge. These people would be rounded up by the NKVD and either summarily executed or sent to gulags. The initial estimates from each district were based on the number of people already under surveillance, but once that number had already been purged from the district, requests would be sent to Stalin to increase the number by thousands at a time. These requests were authorized, and the purge continued. However, the purge began to extend beyond just supposed political opposition. Ethnic minorities also became a target, with the largest operation targeting the Polish population. Over 110,000 people were executed as part of the Polish operation, with only about 85,000 of them actually known to be ethnic Poles. The others were merely suspected of being Polish, which was enough for them to be summarily executed with no follow-up questions. Despite ethnic minorities only making up 1.6% of the population of the Soviet Union, they accounted for 36% of the total deaths during the Great Purge, with Poles alone making up 12% of the total deaths. In addition, there were also people who were purged merely by circumstance rather than any action on their part. If a person was executed for opposing Stalin, then their entire family could fall victim to the purge as well. So too could their friends, neighbors, and passing acquaintances. The loss of civilian lives was immense. But one of the most shocking developments was the military purge. This would also be one of the most important aspects of the Great Purge as it related to future events. While over 30,000 members of the Soviet military were executed as part of the purge, it was not exclusive to the rank and file. A staggering percentage of high-ranking officers were subjected to the purge, including 3 of 5 marshals, equivalent to 4-star generals, 13 of 15 army commanders, equivalent to 3-star generals, 8 of 9 admirals, 50 of 57 corps commanders, 154 out of 186 divisional commanders, 202 out of 406 brigade commanders, and 11 vice commanders of defense, 98 of 108 members of the Supreme Military Soviets, all 16 army commissars, 25 of 28 corps commissars, and 58 of 64 divisional commissars. After 3 years, the Great Purge finally started coming to a close. The damage had already been done. The exact number is impossible to know, but it's estimated that the Great Purge claimed the lives of between 700,000 and 1.2 million citizens. Some were political enemies of Stalin, but others were executed because of their ethnicity, because they happened to be in vague proximity of an industrial accident, or because they were chosen entirely at random. Becoming the target of the purge spelled doom for a person's entire family as well. If a man was convicted, even when the NKVD knew that it was on the basis of false charges, their family was subject to punishment as well. Wives and children as young as 12 could be executed or sent to the gulags, with younger children being sent to orphanages. However, once the Great Purge came to a close, it was time to tie up loose ends. Stalin had tried to execute all of his political enemies, but he had done so through corrupt, extrajudicial means. This meant that everybody involved had to be dealt with as well. After being stripped of his position, Yezhov was put on trial and executed. The judges from the show trials were also executed, as were the 3 men who were only sentenced to prison rather than death in the final Moscow trial.
Alright, that's it, guys. Again, I shortened this video, so if you want to see the whole one, you have to go to his YouTube channel and check it out for yourself. The end of the purge, he said 700,000 to 1.2 million. That is the purge. That is not the famine. So that's the purge with the famine. That's millions upon millions upon millions, bodies on top of bodies on top of bodies. Anybody who thinks that this guy is a good guy either is uneducated or a monster for themselves and think mass murder and genocide is a good thing. You remind me of the Salem witch trials, like, executing minorities. Even if you don't know if they're a minority, just point to one and say, that's a Polish, he's an ethnic, kill him. It also reminds me of North Korea, where if a father and mother is put to death or put into the camps or the gulags, then their whole family can be subjugated to that. Their children, as young as he said 12, their nieces and nephews, their brothers and sisters, their parents. So that's very North Korean, and maybe North Korea actually was inspired by Stalin. Stalin purging everyone because he was paranoid. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you starve out millions of people, take over a country, and become a horrible dictator. You have to be paranoid because there are going to be people who are going to want to get rid of you. I don't know, maybe the plan should be not to be a horrible, murderous, genocidal dictator. That might be an option. And then the whole, everyone who knew how Stalin did what he did. They talked about the performative or the show trials where he tortured people into confessions and stuff like that. He has to get rid of all those people because they know the plan. They know how to do it. And now because they know how to do it, they can now do it to him. And people have said this before, people who try to go along with this idea of the socialism, communism, Marxists, or just a takeover over the government. If you go along with it, you are also going to be put to the wall. You're not going to escape the gulags because you know the plan. You know how it's done. Offing all the rich. You hear that now, again, with the socialist, communist, neo-Marxist people today of eat the rich. It's kind of the same idea. Put them to the wall. Getting rid of all the intellects because they might be able to figure out how to get rid of you, how to get rid of the dictator. So yeah, could history ever repeat itself? Of course it can. And if you don't think that, then you are naive, my friend. I thought this video was interesting. I'm glad I watched it. I hope you learned something from it, or maybe you already knew all of this. I definitely learned something from it. And yeah, Stalin's not a good guy, and I would fight anybody who tries to walk in his footsteps. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think of this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell to get notifications when I do upload. All of that really does help with the algorithm, guys. If you'd like to support the channel, you can donate. It helps me keep you on this platform, and you guys have an amazing, beautiful, wonderful day. Bye.
Joseph Stalin was one of the most brutal dictators of the 20th century. After taking power, his immediate efforts to turn the Soviet Union into a global superpower backfired, causing his leadership to be called into question.